'cause you gave me your peace. Because of you, there's a change in my life, 'cause you gave me your joy. You are my God, my everything. I will proclaim you are my King. Because of you, there's a change in my life, 'cause you gave me your love.
Come fill my world.
Come fill my world.
Come fill my life.
Come fill my life.
Come take my hand.
Come take my hand and walk with me.
Come fill my world.
Come fill my world.
Come fill my life.
Come fill my life.
Come take my hand.
Come take my hand and walk with me. Because of you, there's a change in my life, 'cause you gave me your peace. Because of you, there's a change in my life, 'cause you gave me your joy.
Welcome to St. Helen Catholic Church in Vero Beach. We're here in the sanctuary in the altar, sitting and talking about different things that are occurring, particularly in this year of faith, as established by Pope Benedict, writing from October 2012 to November 2013. And today we're going to particularly hear about a case that we might be strengthened in our own individual faith. We know that Jesus came and he healed because of the faith of those people around him. So we're called to look at our faith and have it strengthened this year. Pleased that we might hear from Susie Keegan right now and hear of an instance in her life of her faith and what happened in regards to prayer. So Susie, would you tell us in your own words what occurred?
Well, yes, I would. I was diagnosed with wet macular degeneration in September of 2010, and this is a condition in which abnormal blood vessels grow in your eye, and they bleed into the center part of the macula, and eventually you lose central vision. I was familiar with it because my father had suffered with it for his last 5 years and was blind for those 5 years. And I'd had dry macular degeneration for about 10 years. And so I had some background on it. And I have to say, I was devastated. I was just done in. And I was already seeing doctors at NIH, at the National Eye Institute at NIH, because we live in Maryland half-time. And I was able to get into a study they were doing, and the understanding was I would have 4 monthly injections in my eye for wet AMD, and then see where we went from there.
And what were the consequences? What was happening right now with your eyesight while you were at this stage?
Well, the symptoms, which were what started all this, are where straight lines take a real dip, and in whatever direction, they're no longer straight. They have these curves out of them, and buildings have these waves in them, and it's hard to ignore.
So you were seeing some of that.
You very much know that there's a problem. And so I agreed to this treatment and to be in the study, but I just couldn't get past it. And I started a journal, which I'm not going to read because it's way too hard to read out loud. But it was just my heart pouring out to God and to Jesus and to Our Lady, and just asking for strength and asking for healing. And I prayed to St. Lucy, and I prayed to St. Anthony of Padua, and St. Padre Pio, and I just couldn't get past the dread. So anyway, we came back down here for the winter, and I ran into a very faith-filled friend who said, "Susie, you need to come to a healing mass," and I'd never heard of one. And I said, I'd be glad to, and
sounds like a good idea.
It sounded like a good idea to me, and she said, we have one the third you know, Thursday of the month, and an evening mass. And so I came in January, I believe it was. No, I'm sorry, it was in February. I came to the mass here, and Father Tree was the priest saying mass that evening, and I had never met him before, and he was just speaking to us before mass a little bit, and he said he just had a feeling that there were some among us who would be healed that night, and there are just so many of us who need healing, internally and externally. And when I went to Father Tree for his anointing and prayer, I was I was just such a mix of emotions. I was frightened, I was nervous, I was hopeful. And the amazing thing was, after Father prayed over me, he said, God has told me your eyes will be healed. And I was just stunned. This isn't, you know, I'm a very ordinary person. and so then anyway, this was in February, so I went back to NIH, to the Eye Institute, and they had all my tests and so on, and he said, your eye's completely clear, it looks terrific. And I said, that's wonderful. So, and I kept going back because I had to do monthly appointments. And I need to say, something that I really held on to in this time was Mark 11:24, where Jesus says, therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you will receive it, and you will. And I held on to that a lot. So anyway, the doctors said that I was fine in February. In March, I went back again, and he said, well, there's a little bit of a spot there. And I was devastated. And then I remembered the story about Jesus healing the blind man, and it didn't completely heal the first time, right? So, but I said, can I hold for one more month? Is it really vital that I get the injection today? And I told him a little bit about Father Tree, about the healing mass, and that I really felt that God was working on my healing. And
I'm curious, if I could stop you there, what was his reaction to that comment?
He said, I understand that not everything is answered by science. That's not where he was coming from, but he was okay that's where I was coming from. And so I waited through March, and I came back, and in April I finally met Father Tree, and we spent a little bit of time together in his office, and I told him about that little bit of problem with my eye, and he said, would you like me to pray over you again? And I said, I would love it. And so we went to the Blessed Sacrament Chapel, where we could be in front of the Holy Eucharist, and he prayed over me again there, and it was an incredible experience. I just felt so much at peace after that. And then we went back up to Maryland for the summer. So my April appointment, May, June, July, August, September, every single month I went. He said, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it. And I said, you do know what I'm doing. I am thanking God every day. So then in October, he said, you really do have an issue this time. It wasn't showing up. I had no symptoms at all, but he said, I feel very strongly that you do need an injection. And he knew I was not going to come back every month this last year. And so I said, all right, fine. And I did have one. Then I came back down for the winter here. And I had told the doctors up there I would see someone down in Bascom Palmer, which is it's a very respected eye institute. So I did. I saw a doctor in January, and he said, your vision's amazing. He said, you're fine. He said, come back in 2 months, we'll check you out again, which I did. And when I went back that time, the doctor said, I don't see anything. He said, I don't even know if you still have wet AMD. I've read many articles about it. I've never read anywhere that
Disappears.
there's no such thing as a cure. Not through science,
Not
anyway.
in the articles,
science.
yes. Yeah.
So anyway, this last October, this month, I had my 2-year anniversary. And I didn't get a chance to even share this with Father yet, but it was a full spectrum of tests. I had this huge battery of tests, 4 or 5 hours, and I met with a doctor, and he said, Mrs. Keegan, I don't know what to say, but whatever you're doing, keep it up. Your eye is perfectly fine. I did, and he just looked at me and he said, that doesn't happen with wet AMD. It doesn't go away on its own.
And come back.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that's where I am today. And I just, we speak about this being a year of faith. It has been an incredible year of faith for me. I mean, so much healing internally, so much spiritual healing.
When you say that, Susie, it reminds me of the articles I've read about just the people going to different shrines. And sometimes people are healed instantly, sometimes later, but they're always healed. They always come away with something.
Oh, yes.
And just as you read the scripture from Mark, they come away with what they need when we're open to it. And I appreciated when you said you came down for healing at that very first Mass. You said you came down with some trepidation, maybe some doubt, but also hope and faith, clearly faith. Yeah.
Yes, a definite combination.
How would you describe your faith today versus going back to
Before
prior to all of this started?
Well, some things happened along the way. I just happened to walk to. I mean, I go to Mass regularly, but I just happened coming out of Mass one day, right about this time of year, and I saw a little sign that said there would be a 9-day novena of daily Masses for All Souls Day. And my mother died on All Souls Day, and I thought this would be a nice tribute to her. So I did that, and then I just decided I kind of like this, going to Mass every day. And so I have been doing that ever since. I do go to weekday Mass, almost every weekday. And I would say the other thing that I have added to my faith is I have enjoyed morning prayers for a long time. But when I spoke with Father Tree about how nervous I still was every time I went to the doctor, and how I'm always asking God to increase my faith, and he said, Susie, say the rosary every day. And at first I thought, yikes.
Every day?
Yeah, every day. And now it's like, I have to start with the rosary.
Part of the day.
That's the beginning of my morning prayers. Yeah. And I'm so glad he told me to do that.
I just heard recently someone said something similar to that about praying or the rosary. We're going to confession regularly, and the priest said, well, how often do you do it? And it wasn't very often was the response. And he came and said, well, how often do you eat every day? Or how often do you eat during the day, or something like that. But it's awareness. It's not that we don't want to, but we get into habits, or it's just that awareness. Just like, and isn't it interesting too, all of the different things you relate about your faith, the invitation to come to the Mass. You know, Father sensing something at the beginning of Mass, which might have been said for you or whoever, the others, but to give some people the comfort to come up for prayer. Because some people come to the Mass and feel hesitant to come up for prayer. But all of those different steps, when our ears, and your ears are open, I mean, you heard that. You responded to the invitation. You heard him at the beginning of Mass. I mean, that's our faith in action, which is, what Pope's trying to beat into us this year, that we might be aware of it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I would also encourage you, just as you did that very first time at the meeting with your doctor, is just tell others.
You are my God, my everything. I will proclaim you are my King. Because of you, there's a change in